Welcome to the Power of Advice series brought to you by Zurich Life Insurance in the Middle East. We're collaborating with industry leaders to educate our audience about the need and the power of financial advice so you can take optimistic action and secure your financial future.
Welcome to the Power of Advice, brought to you by Zurich Life Insurance in the Middle East. My name is Rayner Britto, and I head the sales and distribution for Zurich in the Middle East. Joining me today for the very first episode of the Power of Advice, we have Rickson Dsouza and Sanjay Punjabi. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Right, so we're going to be having quite a few things going on over the course of the next 15-20 minutes. But first, to make it a bit more interesting, we're going to have a bit of a rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you guys ready?
Very much.
First thing that comes to mind. We'll start with Sanjay. Coffee or tea?
Me.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Unit link protection or pure protection?
Oof, pure protection.
Interesting. Football or cricket?
Cricket.
I'm more of a football guy. Cat person or dog person?
Dog person.
Interesting. Do you like cooking or being cooked for?
Being cooked for always.
Any day. Face-to-face or virtual meetings?
Face to face.
Probably a mix of both for me. This is a good one. French fries or onion rings?
My wife loves onion rings. I just go with that.
So for you, it's French fries.
Yeah. And it's some brownie points.
Shopping online or in-store?
Online.
Online. Setting aside a fixed amount every month or a percentage of your income?
Percentage of your income.
Out of curiosity, what percentage would you recommend?
Depends on the income. So if you have a low income, it would be around 10, 15. If it's higher, 15, 20, 25, 30. And even goes to 60% sometimes.
Wow.
Where the incomes are.
I'm not that lucky. Education or experience?
Experience.
Books or movies?
Movies.
Guacamole or salsa?
Oof, guacamole.
Work from the office or work from home?
Work from the beach, but work from home.
Work late or leave work early?
Early.
Emails or WhatsApp?
Oof, nice. I have to say WhatsApp.
Digital advice, human advice, or a mix of both?
A mix of both.
Nice. I have one last one, but I'm going to go to Rickson for this one. Shampoo or conditioner?
Oh, shaving gel.
Excellent. Let's jump into a bit more serious things now, right? So, I've been in this industry for around 22 odd years, and over these 22 odd years, I think I've seen you guys many a times, right? So I know you guys have been doing this for long as well. What I need to understand is, how did it all begin?
Sure. This might be a really long story. I'll try to make it very brief. October 17th, 1999.
Wow.
I met my mentor at 7:15 in the morning in Pearl Building on Banyas Square. And that was the only time he had available to see me. I quit my job over a text message because WhatsApp didn't exist. It was to my dad, the message. He was very furious about it. And then I joined my then mentor. And the reason I joined was a couple of things. But he said, you need to meet 3 people a day. So your job is to meet people. You can work as many hours as you want, as few hours as you want, make as little or as much money as you want.
So you have the flexibility of time.
That's, of course, freedom of time, freedom of money. And the job was to meet 3 people a day. Everything was check, check, check. And I joined the business. I was 22.
And for you, Sanjay?
My story goes back to 1998. That was the time when Eagle Star had come down to Bombay. I remember not joining at that time, though I was recruited.
Right.
Yeah, because I said no. I was not very sure about what I was going to do out here. And then this guy who was the manager at that time, he kept calling me and he told me, saying, Sanjay, this is meant for you. Trust me, you're a people's person. I saw how you spoke to us and how you negotiated all the terms, etc. And I think you'll be able to do a good, do out here. And then in September, I came down here, joined the CAT course. Those days, Eagle Star used to have 4 products, and we used to have a 21-day period of training. And that's how it all began. And I remember those days in the CAT course, the last thing would be that if you were a topper in the entire group, then you would get something like a Quick Start Award.
Okay.
And the Quick Start Award is given to you by the managing director of Eagle Star those days. And you would be called on an annual award function. You walk up the stage. There's a Mont Blanc pen given to you, a trophy given to you, and there are about 400-500 people clapping at your name being called out. That to me was a beautiful visual. And I kind of lived that every day. I even went to Cutchins and stitched a new suit to say that I will win this. And
So when did you get the Mont Blanc?
I got it in January.
Right.
That's where it began.
So over the years, I'm sure you guys had your fair share of ups and downs, right? But you still remain so motivated.
Yeah.
How do you guys go about it?
I have a goal setting process in mind. When I joined the industry, I said I joined the industry for freedom of time and freedom of money.
Right.
You're told this when you enter the industry if you've got the right manager. But I was told that at some point there will be a switch. And this should about happen at the time of your first death claim. Unfortunately for me, my first death claim came about 9 months into selling the policy to a very young individual, where I'm ashamed to say I didn't have the resources to meet him often enough and to change a beneficiary. And as a result, the claim didn't get settled in the way he would have wanted it. And it changed everything for me. While today, the driving force, of course, money plays a very important part of it.
Right.
But the motto in life today is to show up with a check. So that keeps me very grounded. If we sign on a client, then the thought process is lifetime. That's the relationship. And of course, if anything goes wrong, we drop everything and let's focus on settling the claim. I think that keeps me very on my path.
Well said. Sanjay, for you?
I think my story is almost the same. I just think that what keeps me going all the time, and we've seen it all, right? So we've seen 2009 happening where the fund values went down tremendously. Clients were very shaky. They came up to us and said, but we've seen those times.
How did you manage such situations?
Very difficult.
I'm intrigued because I went through it myself, right? 2008, I was working for one of the financial institutions here. And we went to hell and back with customers who had lost a lot of their money. So how did you manage that one-to-one?
So I'll tell you, I was just exactly like you, initially very shaken. And I thought, and I took it up very personally on myself that maybe I've given a wrong advice. And oh my God, these clients, they trusted me. And suddenly their valuations have dropped 30-40%. Right. And I wasn't able to sleep with myself on this thought. But then slowly and steadily, there's one thing that always, makes me come back, is that I've not tried to intentionally harm or hurt anybody with the way the advice was given. And what most importantly worked for me and still works for me is the belief that what I go through from all my lows is the belief system in this industry, like he said. And I feel that in 23 years and 10 months that I have worked out here, I don't have a single claim that has ever got rejected. And this is full marks to the industry. I mean...
yes, but I think it also goes down to you in terms of your capacity as an advisor, right? Because at the end of the day, if you've done your bit at the start of the journey of a customer, where all of the information is disclosed, going back to your point on your first experience, right, with the customer, with a claim. If the hand-holding is done well at that point of time with the customer, where all of the disclosures are done, all of the information is provided rightfully, then you will have a proper experience at the claim stage as well.
I agree with Rayner. And I think the very important point is that is any advisor looking at this as a short-term event or a long-term stay into the industry? For me, that's a big one. I know one thing, that I can remain in this industry forever. Till the time people are going to be getting an income, there will always be a role for people like Rickson and myself, and so many of us.
So you mentioned 23 years that you've been doing this, right? So do you remember, or do you still have your oldest customer with you, or?
My first client is still my client.
Excellent. And what's your client's experience? What's your view on dealing with the client, next generation probably, or?
Oh, the next generation is a very interesting one. I personally feel that the belief system of what you should be doing remains the same. There are basically 4 important needs that everybody must take care of. One is protecting their family, one is making enough of reserves for retirement, the third is to take care of their education of children, and lastly is to take care of their own personal aspirations. I think this by and large will remain the same whether you're dealing with a millionaire or you're dealing with a waiter in the bar. It all remains the same. They all have the same, they have to go through the same phases. So it'll always remain the same.
And Rickson, you? Longest, oldest customer that you've been dealing with?
Very interesting one, because he worked with me on my team for the last year and a half.
Really?
So he transitioned out of being my client, and for the last year and a half, he actually worked on the team. So we had a situation where initially I was apprehensive about a client of mine seeing our backstage.
Mm-hmm.
But him coming onto our team and working in the role of in a capacity as an analyst, more from a learning perspective, because he was switching industries and stuff, gave me the confidence to know that if I had today, whether the client is an entrepreneur, an executive, it doesn't matter. If they came on board and we had to open up our backstage to them, I can be 100% transparent and not have to worry about what the thought process would be over there. So we've had a very successful. And he's no longer on the team because he's moved on, but he's still our client. So, touch wood, it's been a good experience both ways.
That's interesting. So another one, an interesting one, right? And this comes up a lot. Last 3 to 4 years, we've seen quite a bit of regulatory change in the market, right? Central bank, insurance authority, merging of the entities under the central bank. How have you guys coped with it? What have you done over the last 3 to 4 years?
I have this mantra, which is control the controllables. The regulatory changes is not something which is in our control. How we react to it and how we adapt to it is completely up to us. I know a lot of people, when this happened, were in denial that it will change back. It's not sustainable. It'll change.
Right. Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, globally, it's the way forward. In the financial services industry, regulation seems to be coming in every part of the world. And Dubai was not the first place to adopt these. So if you just keep up with the trends, you have to understand the reasons behind this was to protect the interests of the client first. And as long as you understand or you're aligned with the goal of the regulator, then it makes it easy for you to continue going about doing your job without having to sit and think about the repercussions of the regulations. I feel that there is some fear from certain individuals, which is true for every industry.
Right.
And that also may have to do with the way the practices, the shortcuts that may have been taken. Today, we have to document everything. And I believe the regulation changes coming at the time of COVID actually enhanced even the tech support that was available in the industry as a whole. This changes things completely for us. So personally, I feel that these changes were going to happen. It was a matter of time. And we've not changed anything with our working style. As far as we're concerned, everything was documented. Everything is still documented. Clients are given the advice, keeping in mind their needs first. That hasn't changed. But what I like about the regulatory changes today is something going back to what Pankaj mentioned earlier, is people tend to be a little transient. So the question is, are you looking at it as a shortcut, as a short-term grab and go as an advisor? Because if you are, then these regulatory changes are going to bother you. It makes it more difficult for a grab and go. Versus if you're thinking long-term, if you're thinking that this is the industry you want to be in, not to earn your money and jump into something else, but think about it from a long-term or lifetime relationship standpoint to the client, then this could be the regulatory changes could definitely be in your favor over the years to come. This could be from an income perspective, from a benefit to the client standpoint. I think being in this country for so many years, I've been here most of my life. And one thing that we've always noticed is there has been a huge level of transiency. People have come in and people have left. This happens every year. In our industry, when an advisor leaves, unfortunately, they leave behind a wake of what we call orphan clients.
Yeah.
If the advice given by those advisors who are leaving was solid, it was credible, then it doesn't matter, because it's just a question of moving those contracts to another credible agent.
Yep.
But in the past, what we've seen is the people who have left may have left behind a wake of destruction in their path, where clients have just been completely, ripped off of their hard earnings. And this is where I think the regulator is trying to address.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
To deal with the core of the problem. It may not be the best solution, but you know what? Antiviruses and malwares work in a way when it first finds out what the problem is and then creates a solution for it. People who are creating viruses and trying to hack into your systems will always find another way. And then another version of the malware will come out. And this is how the regulator needs to function as well. So I think overall, if you ask me, I'm happy about the way things have progressed, because it also means that for people who have a long-term vision for the business, it is in their favor.
It isn't, yeah.
And the favor and the interest of the client, of course.
Customer first.
Yeah.
Transparency.
Absolutely.
And then everything you said when it comes to a long-term view from advisors. Yeah. That's the. Anything to add from your side?
So I think regulation is good because it builds credibility. Firstly, important. And there's also a way to say that I'm concerned, in what you do, how you do, what is going to be the end effect of it to the customer. What I would love to see is a lot more penetration to happen in our space. And I hope that can be the end result of it.
So you're saying more financial
people,
advisors
absolutely
joining the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm grateful to one thing that there are certain pockets in the world wherever the regulations have come in, it's suddenly gone from an advisory business to a product selling business. That's not happened here as yet. We still have an advisory business which is so we're very grateful that we exist as a community, as a fraternity. And we'll be able to do a lot of work with customers, whether it is who are on board and a large chunk of people who are still not on board. So that's what I'm looking to.
And I think that kind of brings me to the next point, right? So from a value perspective, what value do you think a financial advisor actually brings to a customer or prospect?
Oh, immense. I can go on.
Versus me, for example, today going digitally to an aggregator platform or directly to website of an institution and buying.
So let me answer this in a story. So I had a client who left from here, went back to India, like you mentioned, transient, went back to India, came to me and told me that, Sanjay, I want to discontinue the policy. Sat him around, said no, go ahead, went back, reduced the contribution from X amount of dollars to the minimum so that the policy keeps going on. He had a life cover in it, etc. Came to a point, he called me up and he said, no, I want to, disinvest because I can't even afford the minimum part of it. I told him there's no problem. You stop the contribution, but keep the policy on because that's the only thing that you have.
In terms of the protection.
In terms of the protection as well as in terms of whatever money was there. Those were the days where Vista used to come with a life cover included. Yeah. So whenever a client wanted both of it into one and could not afford more than that, we would offer this because there's protection as well as there is a saving point. He agreed somewhere. We had a call between Delhi and Dubai. He agreed. A few months later, a friend of his called me up and he said, Sanjay, do you know what has happened? I said, no. So he said, he's gone into paralysis. He's gone into coma. So I said, oh, really? He says, yeah. And the situation now is there's a father at the age of 85, mother at the age of 80, wife who's never worked in her life before, and a daughter who's in university going to be pulled out of college because there's absolutely no money in the house. They're staying in a rented house. And because he's in coma, they need two people to shift him every day. And there's a cost involved into it. And he said, we are three college friends who are putting in money every month and making this go through. And I didn't know how to react because it was just too overwhelming for me. And so one of my trips to Bombay, I decided to go to Delhi and meet them. I went and met them, and what I saw was very emotional. So anyway, I came back, and this is where the story begins, because I came back and I called Taru in Zurich because it disturbed me. And I told him, I said, look, this man has got a life cover. And I've seen the situation in the house. And I can tell you that there is every possibility that the man will die because there is no money for the treatment or care. And the money paid out after that would somewhere not justify what we are doing.
Yeah.
So he says, what do you want? So I said, can we do the payout before? And whatever way you want, I'll secure it and everything like that. And he came back to me in 2 days' time and he said, we've agreed.
Wow.
We've agreed. I came back to Zurich. We reopened the file all over again, went through the whole process. And then when the claim was paid out, I flew down there, made them to go into a bank account, and I told them, you should only look at trying and spending only the interest of the fixed deposit so that the capital always remains. And that's what they did for a very long period of time. But that day, it brought me a sense of accomplishment that, how important the role of an advisor is to a client. Because if we had not, I'm not talking about me alone. I'm sure Rickson is doing it in his workspace, and everybody in our fraternity is doing it, because this is a relationship about feeling and what you feel for the business. And if we wouldn't have done it, I think it would have made a big difference to that family out there. This is what I feel.
So to summarize, you'd never get this if you're sitting in front of a screen and going through an application process or a redemption process.
I prefer meeting people. I think it's a great way of doing things.
And for you?
It's a very touching story, and I totally agree with what Sanjay said over here. For me, I'll tell you, I mean, I'm a very functional person. So if I drive a car, I'm interested in getting from point A to point B. But occasionally the car needs to go in for a service, something breaks down, and you're at the mercy of the mechanic, the engineer. I mean, if I popped the bonnet and I went on a multiple YouTube videos, can I try and figure out how to fix this myself? Sure, it's going to take me a lot of time. I may get the wrong parts. And, when I'm driving to Abu Dhabi, the car might just break down along the way again. Maybe in the middle of a sandstorm, who knows? So we rely on professionals in different industries. And they've got the skill, they've got the education, the experience to walk you through that. Our industry and what we stand for is very different because, at the end of the day, when you're on the highway and your car breaks down, you can hitchhike, you can call Uber, Careem. There are so many things, things available. But, talking about Sanjay's story, if he didn't handhold the client over there, or he was not part of the equation, if this was purchased on an aggregator, I don't know about you, but I've purchased tickets on an aggregator website. When something goes wrong, trying to get hold of the right people, and I'm not saying the people are not there, but
knowing who to reach out.
Do you know whom to reach out? Do you know when they're available? It is a frustrating process for a client. We had most recently seen September of last year, one of our clients passed away, unfortunately. And there were 2 life insurance policies and a couple of investment plans that were in place. And inside 4 days of receiving the claim certificates, the money was released to the client's spouse instantly, no questions asked. This was September of last year. From September of last year till now, neither has she received the end of service settlement from the company that he worked for. And he worked for a fairly large blue chip firm. They haven't received the group life insurance policies either because it's going through probate. And the probate process requires them to lean on to make new relationships with other professionals who don't know much about them. The advisor role is missing. So the only thing that got settled, even their cars and their homes have not yet been transferred across, right? So if you ask me today, I'm sure if the spouse could make a choice today, she would pick in every element to have an advisor present for every part of it, so that by now everything would have been resolved. And while emotionally they can't bring him back, financially they're not at the mercy of the system or not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
So I think the role of an advisor, especially in what we stand for and what we're trying to accomplish over here for the client, is huge. I wouldn't risk it. I mean, I have an advisor myself. If something, we have I have a backup advisor. So my family has been advised if something goes wrong, this is the person you need to reach out to, and they will make sure everything is sorted out. I believe in the system completely, 100%.
And if I may add on, it's not just during claims that or in the process of giving advice on the features of the product that we play a role as an advisor.
Right.
But in life's changing patterns, we play a huge role as well. Where you were, like you mentioned, 22 years. Right?
Yep.
Your story 22 years back was very different than what it is today. And things keep changing in a life. The aggregator would not be able to be helpful at any stage for this. But with constant reviews, which we always do, because it's a part of our business, right? So when we do these reviews and when we look into and introspect into the client's position, there's so many things that happen. How many times do we meet people who say, "Oh, I do have a policy. When did you take it up? 20 years back. How much cover did you take?
I don't know.
$75,000 or $80,000. What is your worth today? $2 million, $5 million. And what are you doing with that small policy?" I'm saying you're happy with it. It's good. But at least revisit that situation.
And that's a mistake I think most people make, right?
Yeah. And these are so many innumerable so many stories that I can tell you.
There's an interesting one that, I mean, going back to what Sanjay referred to, but life's moving on a regular basis. People's situations keep changing. I remember a client who purchased a contract with us at the age of 38. He was charged a higher premium on account of being overweight, and he had a fatty liver. So the rating that he received on critical illness was ridiculous. At the age of 47 or 48, he went through this self-redemption process. He was planning a big birthday bash. He wanted to visit the boys, so they were all going to go together, and he decided to show up with a six-pack. So he went through this transformative, change. And in that process, all I said to him was, do your medicals again. Let's relook at that pricing. Do your medicals again. And we did the medicals again. And it's unreal. For him, it was such a huge satisfaction because at 38, he got rated 150%. And at 48, he purchased a policy at standard pricing and reversed the price point of the old policies as well. Which, if you've purchased on an aggregator website, I mean, sure, you might get the policy maybe cheaper in the beginning, and you'll avoid having to meet a consultant, but that also means you avoid all the frills of having the advisor around and making the necessary changes on the products along the way.
For example, another example would be when you started the policy, you were a smoker, and many people decide to quit smoking, right? And then the whole story changes, because if you've not smoked for 12 months, as when you do a constant review, this comes up in the review. A conversation is mentioned. Oh, I last smoked 2 years back. Oh, can we apply for non-smoking rates then?
That's right.
The premiums change. At that point of time, increase the cover, drop the premium based on your, flexibility, affordability, etc. So there are so many reasons why a human interaction is very important, and the role of an advisor is very important. And I'm going to say that Rickson and me are giving up lots of reasons why an advisor is needed, and trust me, there are 100 more which we are not going to reveal. So please take us.
I went through it myself, right? So I've been with Zurich 8 years. I took a Zurich policy 16, 17 years back, right? And going back to what you said, you used the example of 75,000 while worth 2 million. I had taken a policy at that point of time for $200,000. Joint life, both dead future for me and my wife. And I honestly, at that point of time, 200,000 done. I'm set for life. Right. 5 years later, I realized, I said, that's absolutely not enough. Right. My son was born. I said, absolutely not enough. I need to top it up. Now, it was me. I'm in the industry. So it's a different thing. Right. But if you don't have an advisor who's going to be having that conversation with you on a regular basis, then you get lost. If going back to what you said earlier, if you've got the advisors or salespeople who come short-term view, sell, go, you've got these orphan clients who are not being serviced. That's where the problems happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I, in fact, as recent as 3 years back, I topped up on the plan again because I see a need to.
Yeah.
I wasn't as lucky as your client who was rated first and then, that's a different conversation. So if an advisor was looking at making this as a career, what would be your advice to them? Someone's joined the financial services industry, new, fresh, just started. They want to look at it from a long-term, honestly look at it from a long-term perspective. What would be your advice to them? You want to go first?
So my first advice would be look at it long term. In this industry, you never fail. You will only leave early. That's the worst. That's the most important thing. The second thing is, this is a profession which is extremely noble and it pays you. Thirdly, I would say, look at it from this way. How important is your role? Yeah. Everybody starts to get into a career at age, say, 25. Initial years are just teething. And they'll work till 65. Right? There's a 40-year window. We all go to work. We all get our incomes. We all spend money. And we all have some surpluses available. Okay? And if we reach the age of 65, then ideally speaking, we should all have money to retire. But less than 15% of the people have that in the world. And why is it that way? Because it was just not planned properly. That's
not planned, not managed well.
Absolutely. Because everybody thinks that they can plan it themselves, and which could be true. And if you're good, it's fine. But it's like, I just feel that it's not about buying a retirement product that will make you go through. No, I don't mean it that way. I mean, just plan it. And if you think that it is realistic, that's going to get you there, fine. If you think that buying Apple as a company or Tesla for the next 20 years over 240 buys is going to make you, retire, fine. But have that plan. It would be nice to have an advisor in that role to play with you because it's his day job. It's his day job. It's not your day job to plan your money. It's somebody else's day job to plan your money. So that's how powerful the role for an advisor is going to be in our industry. And it's always going to be there. We're never going to go away from the role of advisory. This is what I think.
And you, Rickson? Advice for
New advisors.
a new entrant into the advisory world?
I'd say a couple of things. One is consistency is very important. I was advised at a very young age by my mentor that I could cherry pick the clients I wanted. I entered that, or I left that conversation thinking, sure, you've been in the business for 25 years. It's easy for you to tell me I can cherry pick my clients. And I thought I just needed to serve the world, basically. But in hindsight, I'll tell you, if I go back to the 22-year-old Rickson, what he said was absolutely right, because it's always a realization that comes later on in life. And I don't mean that you're choosing the net worth of your clientele, but maybe you are more conditioned to deal with people of a certain ethnicity, people of a certain, maybe the things you probably have in common with them could be a sport that you play, could be the kids being in the similar schools. There could be so many different points of contact, right? So my point is, be planned out, carefully planned out about what you want to, how you plan to reach out to your clients, who are the clients you want to talk to. I have we've carefully designed our right fit client today. And by rule, we will say no to everybody else. Because I know I'll fail in that role. I know I understand this client completely well, and I can take care of absolutely any problem that comes up because we've had the experience of dealing with them. So sometimes we get introduced to a client who's not in a right fit client. And I feel the right thing to do over there is pass them on to somebody else who's probably better suited to. Exactly. So the point over there is be consistent. Choose your clients, choose the market you want to serve them, with everything you've got, but not at the expense of your family. One of the realizations for me 10 years ago, I used to work 14 to 16 hours a day. I was morbidly obese, and one of my turning points was Zurich rating me 100% at the age of 33 on my own term life insurance policy. It changed. Everything flipped from there for me. And I realized I was prioritizing everybody else's family and everybody else's well-being ahead of my own, right? So it's easy in our industry because there are no boundaries. There is no 8 to 5. It's easy for you to get yourself in a system where you're saying, I'll work the weekend because my client is available. I'll work beyond 5 p.m. because my client is available. And maybe there's a certain age and a certain time to do that. But keep in mind your health, your mental well-being. This is very, very, very critical. And today I'm a big proponent of the fact that there is a base on your clients, depending upon who your clientele is. If you work with crew, for example, cabin crew, for instance, you have to accept the fact that they might be available to see you only on the weekends. If you work with doctors, you might have to see them after work hours. This might be a very difficult conversation as well. So you need to be clear about these things, have a great plan in place, be consistent, and most importantly, the client comes first. The client's needs come first. Everything else is secondary. If you plan to serve a specific market, just remember that their needs are first. Product, commission, etc., secondary.
It's an outcome of...
Exactly. You do your job well enough and you'll make it. The last thing I'll say on this is, it's easy to look at somebody who's been in the business for 25, 30 years and say, he's got it very easy, she's got it very easy. Right? I want to be there. But I'm sure if you talk to Sanjay longer, he'll give you stories. And if you talk to me, I'll tell you about taking a sharing taxi from Rolla to Banya Square, taking the Abra and then the bus, only to be kicked out of API World Tower by the security because of cold calls.
Been there, done that myself.
So this is a starting point. Don't look at somebody's future and assume that I need to get there without putting in the hard work and the effort. The learning, the experience comes from you doing the work. So if you're getting in this industry, think long term, think about your client and put in the work. This is important. Shortcuts will not be in your best interest and definitely not in the client's interest.
Okay, I have an interesting add-on to this story. So when I had joined in, I told you about the Quick Start Award, right? So I'm very focused, visualized it every day, knew how I was going to wear my suit and walk up the stage and take the award. Done, finished. Now, having got that claim, I thought I'd made it. I'll be the biggest star. And then come January onwards, there will be a line outside Eagle Star office saying, I want to sign up a policy with Sanjay Punjabi. So I was like flying out there because I'd done very well in first 3 months. Boom. Next 3 months, nothing happened. I went into a zero. I had a zero sale in Q1, which is a big quarter out there. And I addressed the problem. And how I addressed it is because those days I didn't have a driving license. So I used to travel by taxis, like we mentioned. And I was standing outside ABN AMRO's bus stop, taking a bus to go for a meeting. And my then manager saw me and he says, I want to take a picture of you. I said, why? He's saying, because I want to show it to you a few years down the line that the man who today drives a Porsche, once upon a time he used to stand on the bus stop looking at for a bus. So he told me something which is very interesting, and he told me, and that stayed with me. And he said, Sanjay, never do anything that will make you unhappy. And I walked out of that bus station. I took a taxi because, very simple, if you want to meet a client, he doesn't want to meet you sweaty and smelling. Make him your priority as much as you would make it yourself. To be
Invest in
important.
yourself as well.
Absolutely. So this is a big advice. This is your own workplace, your worship, your temple, and how you keep your God is how you keep your work.
Excellent. And that segues very well into my last question. What's next for you, gentlemen? What's next for Rickson? What's next for you, Sanjay?
I entered this profession by choice. I don't plan to retire ever. I'll drive people around me mad if I do. The goals on a yearly basis have always been to accomplish more, but find a smarter way of doing that. So over the course of the years, by clearly defining the right fit client, the proposition, putting in the processes and systems in place, we've managed to bring down active work to 3 days a week. So the goal is to constantly get to the next platform, but not at the cost of the family and the other important things in life, health being a big thing for me. So if you ask me, I'm not going anywhere. This has been home for the last 44 years, and it'll continue to be there. And the industry is the only industry I chose to be in. It was my first job out of college, because maybe I was unemployable. And I think after being in this industry for so many years, I am unemployable now in any other form. So nothing changes. Status quo. We keep moving, serving clients. Hopefully, if things ever go wrong, we'll show up with a check and make sure things are sorted out. That's it.
Excellent. Sanjay, for you?
Many. So my father used to tell me that your rule for working in life should be very simple. When you're walking to your work, make sure that you hear this sound of coins jingling in your pocket and you're whistling going to work. So I think I've found it in this space.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's my biggest guru in my love, in my world. I love this profession. I just genuinely love it because I love people. I love the energy of people. And I'm fortunate enough to think rationally and do good to somebody else's life. I love the fact that, what is the unique thing about liking this is because every time I meet somebody, by the time I meet them the next time, they would have financially done better than where they were. I'm not saying, so one misconception, I will make it clear, that we are financial planners and not fund managers. So I don't mean that I'll make your money go 10 times more or lose it. That's not our role at all. We don't play any role into it. But it's just that you're financially better off, whether it is secured, have put aside a little more money in a rational way. That's what it is. So I love it. I'll keep doing this. But there's another interesting aspect that I want to look into is I've always been part of wealth building and wealth preservation. The other one that is interesting me very, very much is legacy planning. That's when, how do you pass it on to the next generation? Whether it's an organization, how should it go on next? So there is so much of that scope, which we never thought that we would do. But this is an area that's looking interesting to me. But I have a personal side also, which is very interesting. So in September, after this long COVID thing, I went for a road trip and I did Ladakh and I did a 14-day road trip in all over the mountains. Drove on the highest mountable road and stuff. And from there on, I've just fallen in love with seeing countries and cities by the road instead of just flying in, getting into a hotel, doing the 10 top things and go away. So I did one more in Jordan this time. We did a 7-day trip. So I think I'm going to keep doing this a lot. I want to do South America. I want to do Antarctica. and do a lot of this.
I think you should buy a life insurance policy.
I know you have a very interesting hobby as well, right? If you want to maybe share in a minute or so.
Yeah, I told you life changed for me from a health and fitness standpoint. But one of the things that I put myself in uncomfortable situations very often, just to break status quo, just to challenge myself. And one thing that I hated doing, even post weight loss and everything else, was running. But on a conversation with somebody in the gym, I decided on a whim to come back home, research this one race he mentioned. And the first thing that caught me about the race was it said, the world's most toughest foot race. I didn't read the rest of it. It was a huge page. Until then, I was arguing with my wife about why would they do this? Why would two guys carry 10 to 11 kilos on their back and run for 250 kilometers across the Sahara Desert? How does this make sense?
Wow.
I said, does it make sense to her? And she said, just relax. It's not your journey. It's not your battle. Let it go. I said, you're right. I went inside, checked it, website. Whoa, world's toughest foot race. Sign up. And this happened this was instant. This was just, okay, let's see where we go with this. Until then, I was not a runner. I would do 1 10-kilometer race every year. And that was it. Now I had to go from October of 2017, I had to go from having done my 10-kilometer race in January, I had to go from that to being able to run between 30 and 80 kilometers a day for 5 days or 6 days. But in the Sahara Desert, self-supported with all your food and provisions and everything else. It was one of the most liberating experiences of my life. The year after I did this, the year I finished it, a couple of my friends came by to celebrate it, and they said, if you do this again, we'll join you. So I said, you know what? This would be a different experience with you guys. So we went back the second time. And it got me down this whole path of endurance. And I correlate a lot of my life today and the lessons from endurance to life. And that's why I think long-term is for us to be in the industry. So if you ask me today, that is part of my life today. It's blended. So I did mention we moved to a 3-day work week, but the other 4 days are busy with activities like this. It's either ultra running, ultra cycling. The distances could be anything, really. Anything from 50 kilometers to 90, 100 on a run. On a bike, give or take. It just depends upon the wind and everything else. But yeah, it's been a passion for me, and I continue to see myself pushing that barrier just to see where the body goes and where does the mind stop you. And it's taught me a lot. But it's interesting to see what you can push yourself to.
Excellent. On that note, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us
Thank you for
on The Power of Advice. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thank
very
you.
much. Thanks a lot.